our amazing thing. You know, this has been a tremendous show already. And yet we have one more surprise for you, ladies and gentlemen, from the lovely San Francisco city. We are bringing you Roarshock. Roarshock, welcome, sir.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
We can hear you fine, sir. I do want to mention we have Leslie Constable with us as well, and we both have
Leslie.
Hi, Roarshock. Really good hearing you.
It's good hearing you too.
We're going to double team you, buddy.
That's cool.
We're both going to ask you some questions, and I tell you what, none of them will draw blood.
Oh, okay.
So, my first question that I'd love to ask my poets is, when did you first start writing? And the second part of that, it's a two-part question. When did you know you didn't have a choice? When did you know that, by gum, you were going to be a writer? Talk a little bit about the young Roarshock.
Gotcha, yeah. I can answer that fairly precisely. I knew that I was a poet when I was 15. That's when I made that career choice. And
for the money.
No, I had a lot of adjustments to make as I came up against the realities of being a poet, and I did not take the academic path that many poets do. So I lived my life. I worked many jobs and, learned many things, raised a family, and all that time I was a poet, and I would have, read occasionally, publish poems on occasion, and it sort of was in the background of the rest of my life that was going on. And then 2020 happened, and the pandemic hit, and we were isolated, and the silver lining turned out to be the online poetry renaissance since about March 2020. And that has been, that's worked out pretty well for me, and I've met both of you, Rick and Leslie, and dozens of other poets around the world, and that is very gratifying, and also have an opportunity to present my work.
Now, let me ask you one of my other favorite questions. No one can say the most, but let me ask you what, especially when you were younger, what poets impressed you? What poets were gatekeepers and opened up new worlds to you? Can you think of one or two poets that were that kind of, I'm going to say, I like to say gatekeepers. I really do, because that was that way for me. So who were some of the poets that impressed you when you were a young man?
Yeah, and so to follow up on that, I'm basically on the same page, the same path now as I was when I started out. It's the same poets that I'm interested in, particularly currently, as back then. I'm still informed and following these poets. And the eras that most interest me are and especially right now, since it's 100 years ago, are the early modern era, the Imagists, and then the moderns. So a poet like Ezra Pound's very important to me. And then going back to their predecessors, Whitman, of course.
Yeah.
And then also the Beats have had a big influence, and I use that broadly. So poets like Ginsberg and Ferlinghetti, Gary Snyder, Michael McClure, Philip Lancia.
Can I tell you something funny about the Howl poem?
Sure.
It was such a scandal at the time. I actually got paid once to recite Howl. It was a fundraising event for a library, and of course I would have saluted that just hands down. I'm a huge fan of libraries; they're temples to me. But I was actually hired to do some marketing for a marketing company, to do some web work and some graphics, some animation and stuff. In the middle of the prep for this big library fundraiser, the producer turns to me and she says, Rick, listen, you know what would be perfect for this? And I went, no, I have no idea what in your mind would be perfect to support a library event. She said, you know, if we could have some protest signs, where the heck would we get some protest signs? And I said, protest signs? I got the cover. They're in my trunk. She goes, really? What are they for? And I said, they were for a real protest. They're actual protest signs used by protesters. She goes, oh, that's amazing. Oh, that's, can we rent them from you? I said, listen, you're doing a library event. You can use them. And she hired actors and actresses and bought wigs for the men so that they could do a fake protest. And as I was handing out the signs, they're looking at these, they go, wow, these really look authentic. And I said, yeah, well, they were used right down the street at a war protest, so yeah, they're authentic, right? So the other thing that was funny was, okay, I mean, it's one thing to provide the signs for a fake protest. That was interesting. But she also had turned to me that same time and said, well, listen, now we solved that problem. She said, you know what would be neat if we had some beatniks? Well, anybody who actually knows anything about beat knows that beatniks and hippies were really two different eras completely. She goes, you know what would be really cool? If we could have like some beatniks dressed up with like berets and stuff and like all in black, and they could like recite poetry at the event. And I said, okay, I'll do that. That's fine. She goes, I said, well, do you care what poetry I recite? She goes, oh, anything. So and I recited Howl about 12 topics.
Wow.
That's awesome.
That's a good one.
And Rick, I'm not surprised to hear that your trunk of your car was full of protest signs from actual protests.
How would you guess that? Well, listen,
I don't know.
Let me ask my colleague Leslie. I bet you have a couple questions for our friend Roarshock too.
I do. And Roarshock, one of the things I really appreciate about your poetry, many things, is how embedded it is in the now and in politics. And also, for me, I'm sort of hear and feel and sense San Francisco in your poetry. It's got an aboutness in it that, yeah. So one of the questions that I always have about poetry and for a poet is, how does it work for you? Where do you get your inspiration from? How does that work? Does it come to you whole, or I'll just be quiet because I can hear you.
That is a good question. I don't think there's any pat answer to that question. Yeah. And they come to me by different roads. And some of them just are there, and all I have to do is write down the lines. And I'm sad to say there's many that I was too lazy to write down. So some of them would, but maybe sometimes they come back around another time, but then other ones are like a definite idea, or a definite idea, or an event, or some situation I'm going through in that present moment. And a lot of the poems, there's definitely San Francisco and Northern California is heavy in my work, because this is where I live and where I've lived my whole life pretty much. And let's see, I lost my train. Yeah.
Let me take you in a slightly different direction. Now, some poets are visual, some are, I'm going to say, phrase-oriented. I'm a phrase-oriented largely. I'll get some phrase in my head and go, okay, that's the title, or that's the kicker line or something. So it kind of comes to me like that. Now, do you think of yourself as a situational, a verbal, a picture? How is there one of those methods or a complex of those that work for you?
Again, I would say maybe I'm more of a generalist. I mean, because I approach different poems in different ways, and some of them are definitely driven by the images or by the visual environment, or reminding people of places or what have you. And some of them I definitely get more into the structural, language. I mean, I'm always concerned about the language, that it's clear, and I don't really work very often with formal styles of poetry or and I hardly ever stay in the rules. But I am concerned about, in some poems, I'm concerned about rhyme. I'm always concerned about the meter and the way it sounds.
Yeah, it just sort of flitted through my brain, and I'm hoping I can catch it by its tail before it disappears. But it was burning just 2 seconds ago, and I'm blanking on it. But you know how that
Well, do it. Let it come to you. Let's get this fellow launched on reciting some of this wonderful stuff. How about that? Roarshock, buddy? Go.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. Thank you very much. Well, the first one I'll read kind of talks about that creative process that we were just talking about. This is called Flow Poem. Sunlight on a spring's day. Birds singing, crows cawing. Alan plays guitar. I sit here, finally relaxed a bit. I don't really care what happens. I am seeking a picture postcard view of what's going on, but lacking that, will settle for sitting on this patio, looking up at the twisting shapes of these trees. I don't really feel like writing about what's going on, about what's important, because the important thing right now is to just forget everything and be in some Zen state where everything is seen as if for the first time. What thing is this I have caught myself in? I began half-heartedly thinking I was writing a poem. Now I am not so sure. This thing seems in a state of flux between poem and grocery list, with here an intriguing image, but ever there a meaningless stretch of line. But lo, the meandering babble of a rambling journey down the corridors of my half-forgotten dream. Actually, this week, I have taken myself out of service for some much-needed repairs, and thus I shall not fear that the poem that I write be fuel of a fool for the woodman's fire. But no task ever seemed so cruel as the writing of an overgrown poem, or the writing of a poem with nightmare ranges of structure, yet here and there an image like a gem, shining forth in the wreckage of that monstrosity. It is hopeless to hope to reap the benefit of every marble that ever fell into any storm drain, needles and haystacks, and every hot-blooded dream can be swallowed by guppies in summer puddles. E. Cummings was as much a poet as anyone. And being here is just one measure of success. There is only time to let it flow.
Wow.
Very nice.
It's very, very nice. That
Thank you.
absolutely totally relaxed me.
Cool.
I was
And it's a very nice delivery, too, if I might add.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Thank you. I think that I love the performance of poetry. And I kind of stayed away. I mean, I did, like I said, I've done readings over the years, but part of it was that I had a schedule for 20 years leading up to this period where I worked in New York market shift in San Francisco, so I had no nightlife for like 20 years. I didn't go to poetry readings or anything like that, right? But I was always kind of suspicious of things like poetry slams and stuff like that because I really don't like poetry as a competitive sport,
Right.
And then the general philosophy, I prefer cooperation to competition.
Cooperation, collaboration, absolutely. How about another, sir?
Okay. Let's see here. This one's called Firebird. From the fire's ashes, the phoenix shall rise again. Phoenix, life, death, and rebirth. Broken hearts around broken fires. Were you once a druid? I have seen your eyes dark in the firelight. These trees cast weird shadows. Have you seen the shaman? Dancing, arms flying, the flames lick about his waist. Chanting, chanting, chanting. I've seen your eyes dark in the firelight. The flame bird rises up all at once alive. That which dies can live again. Oh,
Nice.
the stories I could tell about countless descents and reascents, but my memories are clouded. There is a lock upon my mind and shackles on my heart. How I wish that I could burst them and rise up again like a phoenix, all golden and red, bathed in flame. The stars were different then beneath the druid fire. Were you there? Some of that light seems to reflect from your eyes. Could the phoenix leap again out of the fire into the full bloom of memory?
Nice.
Thank you.
Yes. Yep,
Now, you're not constrained by time, so feel free to read one of your longer ones, stretch it out.
That's cool.
A lot of times we're all under the tyranny of the clock.
I hear you.
You've got your 3 or 5 minutes speak, and that's that. Well, we have the luxury of getting to know these poets a little bit more. So, brother, stretch out.
I appreciate that. And, it is nice to be able to, and I appreciate your questions with you as well. And the opportunity to, think about these things and speak about them. Here's a California poem. The Return to Feather River. Long time we ride up California highway to Feather River. 2 students, 1 teacher, 1 poet. We stop and eat at the muffin treat, and then continue across the valley, Indian summer, harvest time, watching the tomato trucks roll by, looking up at the dingy blue sky, crisscrossed with the vapor trails of jets. Another truck with wood slate sides and bright red juicy tomatoes, belching black smoke. Tall corn swaying in the wind at the edge of the highway. We begin to climb, Volkswagen Bug, laboring up the steep mountain grade. The suddenly blue sky, deep high blue sky, crisp breaths of air. Stop by the roadside to stretch arms and legs, walk upon piled granite. Down through Pine Valley, Truckee to Quincy, small bubbling river, late afternoon sun, white and gray cloud, cold wind. Stewart swerves to miss a squirrel, adrenaline rush. Wide, grassy valley, small town, whitewashed houses, chili and coffee at old cafe. Stuart and Kevin eat pie, kneel in the car. Outside, a fat highway patrol officer watches us from across the street while he buckles on his gun. Feather River Canyon, cattle grazing, controlled fires burning. Evening coming on, gray rock, green trees browning with autumn. Thank you. I guess I can read another, huh?
Yeah.
Let's see here.
I've got a real quick question.
Sure.
Well, actually, I remembered what I wanted to ask, and it is, I might have the answer, but I might not from listening to your work. But do you, once you get the idea, or whatever the impetus for the poem is, do you just go with it and you start it and then you just finish it all up in one go, or does it vary, or do you sometimes just
yes.
do it in segments or parts or tell me, either way.
Well, Leslie, it depends.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Some of them just are right there, but and then a lot of my work. I mean, I've been doing new work, but a lot of what I'm also doing, I feel like it's alchemy. It's like I've been distilling. I've been going through. I've been cataloging my work, and sometimes updating poems. And I think a poem, they're never set in stone. They're always available to be updated.
So you go back into them.
Sometimes.
Wow. That's fascinating. And so I'm sure it's just as the poem talks to you about it, or you have this conversation with the poem. It's like, what do you think? Is it something like that, or you just sort of, as you're going through things, you just sorry.
Yeah.
And you just, yeah.
Well, also, I mean, I can, I'm able to stand apart from the poems at this point.
Mm-hmm.
That was not always the case. But even a poem that I've just written, I'm able to view it sort of outside, so it's sort of the poet and the editor, perhaps. You know, so and that's very handy, I'll tell you. You know, it's not like, oh, I can't change one word. You know, it's like, well, maybe I can. You know, maybe this should be updated and it'll be better. You know.
What you just described, oddly, is a theorist I ran into during grad school days. This fellow's name was Victor Lowenfeld, and he was I think, a philosophy professor at the University of Chicago, and one of the professors I studied with in art theory and history. That was his mentor. I'd sort of heard of him before, but Lowenfeld's an interesting character, and he threw out this whole idea of his work was in perception, which is really sexy stuff. It's wonderful stuff. And so he threw out this idea of there are different ways of perceiving, and he made it very, very simple in that the question he would ask is, when you're dreaming, do you see yourself as an actor on the stage, like projecting, seeing yourself, or are you a camera and you're just seeing what you would see out of your eye? Isn't that fascinating?
Indeed.
And he called it haptic perception, and for the life of me, I don't recall which was what. And it's because people who came after him sort of modified his theory. So if you're ever interested in it, just go to Victor. I think it's Victor with a K, Lowenfeld. But I like that idea of that sort of multiple point of view. And then with you, I almost, like I said, I almost sense that you're in a coffee house somewhere in San Francisco.
At least in a dream.
Yeah, you're paying attention. And so my question is, what are you guided by visual prompts more than audio, or ideas or philosophical, or just a mix of things? What's the prompt often for you?
I'm guided by my dreams, Leslie. That would be the main source, probably, and my environment. Whatever I'm observing from my over my espresso in the coffee house, and certainly plenty to observe.
Absolutely, yeah. It's almost like it's like a big stew pot of dreams.
Indeed.
Well, speaking of a stew pot, or at least pot, my brother, I'd like to offer you one of my poems that I do very rarely.
Absolutely.
But it's one that harkens for so many of us the West Coast consciousness expansion. It's my little tribute to marijuana. It's called Medicale Medicinale Marijuana. So here we go. And this is for you, my brother.
Thank you.
The first rough joint, swollen and choking. The friendly circle, friends daring some dear dread danger, sharing a confidence from hand to hand, from lip to sip, even in balance, from hind to mind, caring, careful, measured moments of miraculous Mary's hot breath. Leafy green or dried and dusty brown, bush buds or leaves that jagged reaching, leaves mind sees replace out open-minded signs, the interrupted stems, the blast berries of brown beetles seeding bombs, flowering buds, golden bowing bundles of bright brain food, rude to break up stodgy drops of thought. Leafy powder, pinch to pipe that first forest time, sitting, friended in the woods, off the road, mere mute minutes from the madness, then the giggles, the gladness came, the raining gales of honest home-baked humor, cage-breaking, bar-bending, balloon bubbles of blue-gray, brain-shaking, noise with joy. Did the sleeper awake? What did it take? How gradually the thoughts unclossed. 10 turn global grander seas, scenes unveiling prevailing schemes, larger circles concede. Indeed, the creed replaced with grace. Papers, drapers, rappers, clappers, brain-breaching snappers, saps, sainted sapient seekers, tricking treaters, remove the tile task masks, sifting on an album book. But look, as seeds tumble south, please plant these striving lives to solid soils embrace. Place bright roots reaching consciousness, uncontaining brain rockets from these short sections of fine leafy selection. Are your papers in order? Are they gummed? Are they favored to match the merry march? Who has papers? Who has the catching march matches? Who can roll the droll tally troll, mighty merit badges for new age's sages? Skilled among the circle's pride, pure brotherhood builder at the ashes complaint. The rituals, the victorious, glorious victuals, find the source, sift the course, separate the weeding seeds of need and the stem tide camped ride. Those mass explosions spasm reveal revelry in the deviltry of tiny shirt-stained holes. Who knows what incense the fire's wires flow, twitch tumbles of volcanic passion, humble, ashy, crumble, spray. Whose pitch part plan of the tribal circle clan? Who knows and who doesn't? Who knows the codes, rows, the rules, tools, rolling papers and pipes, the types of pipes, the glassy gas, the gong bong, the casual co-opted tobacco pipe, corn cob, meerschaum, or the special antique clay. From bitty metal nettled disguise to bright blasting plastic bombs, from recycled fruity station, ordered orange to apple pipe, to metal tip, toilet paper tubed roll. The concert scene where you brought jays to burn and yearning, jarring jays to share the dare, crackling on the firing line from handing man to partial sequard chum and row-wise warder. No, hoarder, hides the wide true with lining hidden lies, subdued for you. The wide array of trays of colors and textures, dark green, pale green, dry, cracking, sticky brown and amber, reddish, pale green, leafy, fresh, rock solid, powdery, the sticky, tiny pitch, the itch, loose, baggy leaves or rosy red buds with whiter trim of delight. Papers, zigzag, flavored, strawberry, coconut, thin, fragile, heavy of canvas, the Frenchy fine, toppers working stiff, old friend of 1.5, 1.25, or just the serious and solitary one to daring share. The sunlight repeals the stealing ash, and you bowl and roll a joint that draws well and doesn't run even. The burning bud draws well without sending, failing, falling, orange, golden glitter hail, and the debris that doesn't shower your sweetheart seed with charming sensual sparks. The stem that starts and pokes like jokes to the paper rolls, the unfurnished protruding root beyond the bastion of the sacred. So thou hast added flame and kisses, and girding of circling flames that untamed lurk inside, and as the rings of smoke surround, the blue-tinged ribbons curl, confound, and tease from dreamy eyes new vistas hipsters spy, or even ephemeral, cleverer rivers with misty, wispy, tree-lined budding bloom, winding creeks of freaks and gurgling wisps, which tease and taunt, while gasping spouts thrust past the trusty thought, carrying clouds, breaking up the buds, long wispy tendrils of buds bloom, dry clumps of brown and golden buds that break into crested dust, the buds that sticky clump and only prying fingers find, stingily reduce the bundles of pipe-fitting kindling. The jay for the dead, but measured blossom that tossed on sacred bedside bounce the apples. Well, I'll stop there, but I think you get the idea. I've heard of this. I have heard of this.
It's a great poem, and of course, cannabis is legal in California now. In fact, all up and down the Pacific Coast.
Isn't that a surprise that you West Coasters would lead the way again? Huzzah! Huzzah!
Huzzah.
How about another one, my friend?
Yes, we have a lot of work to do in this country, but we don't give up our hope.
Yep.
Okay. This one is called Chairman of the World. If I were chairman of the world, mice would not vex Disco Stew. Cats would patrol all Midgard and Disco Stew's farmhouse, too. From warrior cat to kitty pet, no solace for the mice that roared. Be they fierce as Reepicheep, be they twerp or low pit squeak, even Frederick the poet mouse, from the tip of his nose to the end of his tail. Ha ha, Stuart Little, cut away all paper bags. The film is nothing like the book. You are not chairman of the world, and neither am I. Alas, alack, alark, leave birds out of this. Dapper, tweed-dressed mice driving roadsters or fighting battles with flashing swords. Of no concern to cats in universes next door. Space-time for springers. Schrodinger, are you alive or are you dead? I like you, cat. I will call you Kim. Now go and catch those mice. Replied the cat, I will call you Lush. I will call you Sot. No is kitten, is cat. Name is Kim. And along with Orange Dudley and Tabby Cats Max and Mo, Mama Kitty too, cat goddess rest her soul, and Queen Silvara, regal and aloof, in the forest of Kim. All send greetings, Disco Stew, so do not be downhearted. Your mice shall soon be thwarted. Swat it down. Your home again a sea of tranquility. When those mice are gone, yours in jest, chairman of the world.
Bravo, sir.
Thank you. You see, we have a few minutes left. Can I read another?
Please do, sir.
This is,
We've got 10 minutes easy.
I know, and we're going to put them to good use.
Burn them up.
This one's called, and here's a more contemporary one. This one's called, well, the other one wasn't that old either. This is We Are the Pomegranate. Now has come October, the harvest mostly in, the last radishes dug from the ground, the last green tomatoes wrapped in paper and stored in the pantry. On the south side of the house, the pomegranate tree droops beneath the weight of fruit. I watched them grow all through the solitary summer, small green bulbs to large red balls. Out of the unexpected blue, cosmic transmissions on the social web, where 2020 introduced me to many dozens of brilliant, supportive poets, spatially dispersed around the planet, but all caught in this same damn year. I am contacted by Paul Jolly, one of the first poets I personally knew, when we were students at Maybeck High School in Bruce Henderson's poetry class. It had been 45 years since we last spoke together. Paul was returned at last to old Berkeley after decades working the halls and lobbies in Washington, D.C., and all that time away from poetry, but now returned with all his great sincerity. We exchanged video links of our readings and books via U.S. mail. We met virtually in cyber chat, bridged that great distance, at least in 2020, between Berkeley and Martinez. In pleasing synchronicity, I had just been thinking of Paul, maybe a day before his contact, remembering that time he approached me at Maybeck in Trinity Hall and held forth two halves of a pomegranate, the myriad bright red seeds gleaming, glistening under the high ceiling lights. "We are the pomegranate," Paul said, laughing, and I laughed. For us, "We are the pomegranate" became a catchphrase, a metaphor. And I also told Paul Jolly back in 1975 that it was the title of a poem. Majid harvests the pomegranates before they bend the tree to breaking. 2 huge baskets. These will be good until February, as was 2019's harvest this year, when we are in a new year, 2021, and 2020 has been endured, and the lucky have survived.
Yeah.
2020, still a few weeks to go. Fingers crossed, all nervous, spells and incantations. Breathe right, relieve stress, and whatever boosts immunity.
Mm-hmm.
A nervously dry November, waiting for California rains to douse the parched land, knock down the wildfires for a while the United States had the highest turnout election for president ever, and over 70 million voted to re-elect President Donald Trump. But more than 80 million voted for Joe Biden, and in the necessary states. But Trump claimed fraud, and as has been the case for years now, disputed the factual basis of reality. And his fans backed his claims on no other authority, and absent any objective evidence. Perhaps the weirdest behavior in utterly weird 2020. Meanwhile, the pandemic sickened and killed thousands and thousands in the United States and around the world, and Dummkopfs gathered and marched from Berlin to Washington to Sturgis, South Dakota. Hell no, we will not wear masks. More reason why I am staying in until this year is safely passed. But we are the pomegranate. All of us, regardless of our vision, be it cloudy or clear. If we are striking out because we are so injured, so emotionally hurt, so fearful that we hit and hurt, or if we are forgiving and loving ourselves, and reach out in love to all the brilliant seeds, all the love radiating from souls, we can help and heal all together now. Love is all we need. And the pomegranates growing again next year and every year. Let the seasons roll around. We are the pomegranate.
Bravo.
Yeah.
Bravo.
You covered a lot of territory with that. Wow. Wow.
It's a delight to share it with you. Thank you.
Yeah.
My brother, one of the questions I like to ask before I let my wonderful poets leave is, if you're approached by a young poet and they wonder, is it worth the effort? Are they good enough? What's the poet's path like? What do you say to a young poet who's unsure of the road ahead?
I would encourage them to go with their muse. I mean, if they feel that they need to write poems, they should do that. And how deeply you go into it, that's for each individual to decide. You know, it's not easy. I mean, it's definitely not easy, and you have to be able to adjust your expectations, and like in my case, you know, be prepared for the long haul.
Well, brother, thank you so very much. Leslie, do you have any final statement or question for Roarshock?
Well, I think my introducing Victor Lowenfeld, I think that I would say that Roarshock, you are a mix of both. Yes, I think in terms of your perception, maybe I'm being a bit fresh with this, but that it's like you're looking outward as though you're the camera, but then you're also just part of the mise-en-scène yourself. So and you place yourself in whatever it's wonderful. Anyhow, it's been very inspirational for me to hear a longer set of yours, because I usually only hear you read one.
Yeah.
And I'm very, very appreciative. Thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you, Rick, for inviting me, and Leslie for being here. And I will see both of you on the social web.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye, Roarshock. See you soon.